Autism is one of those things that few people really understand. Even clinicians would say that their understanding is growing and learning as more studies are undertaken, as more data is being retrieved effectively. When I was first diagnosed with autism and ADHD, my understanding of autism was very limited. And I have gone into a deep dive, as we do, to understand more how that diagnosis actually affects me and what I've done to cope up until the diagnosis and what I'm doing post-diagnosis to learn how to live life on the spectrum. Welcome to Late Diagnosed. If this is your first time here, my name is Michelle, and I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD at the age of 54 at the end of 2023. Here's some of the things that I've learnt about autism. Autism spectrum disorder affects 1 in 36 children. Boys are nearly 5 times more likely than girls to be diagnosed with ASD, and girls are often underdiagnosed with autism and misdiagnosed with other conditions. As someone who is diagnosed with autism and ADHD much later in life, that certainly is true for me. I've shared on previous videos, and I'll link a couple of them in the description. Autism spectrum disorder is one of the fastest growing developmental disorders in the United States. They say that ASD is more common than childhood cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Now, I'm just going to stop there for a second. Some of the information that's available online to anybody who wants to gather that information is very problematic. It's very weighted towards autism being a problem, being something that needs to be fixed, rather than something that just needs to be understood, accommodated, and supported. And so I actually, as part of what I'm doing here in my channel, am wanting to advocate for us. Those of us who are late diagnosed with autism, those of us who are late diagnosed with ADHD, those of us who are late diagnosed with ADHD, any type of neurodivergence, have already masked to get to where we are. We've already had to camouflage ourselves to fit into a world that wasn't made for us. And so when it's put into terms like that, it's one of the fastest growing developmental disorders in the United States. Like, okay, those are some stats, but it's very negative focused. Am I the only one who sees that? I don't like that. We need to start looking at, what our, not even what our superpowers are, because then they're kind of just trying to gloss over all the negativities by saying, oh yeah, but how about we just try and understand each other? There's a concept. How about we just try and get to know the person who's sitting in front of you? One of the things that is probably one of the major problems that I find when I reveal my diagnosis to people, and that is that we kind of get put in the same bucket. So yes, you experience some of the same things that I experience. Yes, I experience some of the same things that you do. But the thing is that we're all individuals. The same as anything else. We're all individuals. We each have a life that is vastly different to each other, but has some similarities. And they're not all going to be the same similarities, and they're not all going to line up. It's like saying that every single child in the same classroom learns exactly the same way and gets all the same information, and therefore this is what the output should be. We all know that's not the truth. We all know that individuals learn differently. We all know that individuals receive the information differently based on their own experiences. So if someone teaches me about, I don't know, the Great Pyramids, for example, and that's something that I'm really interested in, well, I'm going to probably ingest a lot of that information because I'm super interested in it. Someone who's not super interested in that will just be like, yeah, there's a sphinx, there was a pharaoh, or, a couple of pyramids. Whereas for me, I could probably outline to you, a whole date line of what happened and when things were discovered and that kind of information, because that's the information that I heard. Just because someone else didn't hear it doesn't mean that that information wasn't shared. And yet we all expect that for someone who is autistic, just because we have similar experiences or perhaps we learn in a similar way, that we're all going to be similar. And we're just not. Here's an important one: self-advocacy. Now, that's an important skill that's especially important for autistic individuals. And I think probably the thing that I'm learning about self-advocacy is, what do I know about myself in order to advocate for myself? Part of this journey of mine since my late diagnosis is understanding myself. I've spoken before about my flexible work arrangement with my employer and the supports that I've requested. The supports that I've requested at work have been based on what I, as an individual, need, what works for me. Now, finding out what works for me has been a bit of a trial, and some of it has worked really, really well, and other things just hasn't. And then there's the bits where maybe the information hasn't been shared with the right people, and so therefore some of the accommodations haven't been followed to the letter, which have had an impact on me. So self-advocacy is one of probably the most important parts of your journey. And to advocate for yourself means you need to understand what you need. And understanding what you need, firstly, you need to look at what's not working, and then find out ways that you can either do something differently or just basically play it by ear and see what works and what doesn't. What works, keep it. What doesn't, don't. That's one way of advocating for yourself. Interestingly, autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a developmental disability that often presents with challenges before the age of 3 and lasts through a person's lifetime. No medical detection, blood test, or cure for autism spectrum disorder. There's something we didn't know. The medical profession is obviously learning new things every day, learning what works, what doesn't, learning more about how autism presents, and learning and understanding more about the spectrum and what that actually looks like. The medical profession is constantly learning and growing, and I would very much hope that your GP, your psychologist, your psychiatrist is someone who understands you as an individual with autism, with ADHD, with a neurodivergent brain. It is a huge part of us. Our operating system, effectively, is different to what is deemed the norm. And let me just say, what is deemed the norm? Yeah, neurotypical brains are not the innovators. It's been found that the neurodivergent brains are generally, not entirely, but generally the ones who are the inventors. They are the ones who progress us as a society. They are the creatives. They are the painters. They are the sculptors. They are the musicians. They are all things creative. And we are the kind of brains that think outside of the box. We don't subscribe to the norm, and we don't accept the norm unless we're masking, in which case we do, and then we conform to it, and then it burns us out. But yeah, you get that. Anyway. Oh, now here's one that most of you probably think. Many individuals with autism spectrum disorder have difficulty with communication. For some people, this can look like significant challenges with spoken language, and for others, it can look like challenges with social communication. Yep, I would absolutely say that that is true on a spectrum for all of us. The reason being is that our brains operate differently. So if someone says, and I've spoken about this before, so we are quite literal. We will take what you say to us literally. So all of these subterfuges that happen in speech and in what you actually mean, it's why we ask a lot of questions, because we know that your communication as a neurotypical person to us is not going to mean exactly what it says at face value, and we need more information in order to understand further what you mean this time. And I've come to understand over my lifetime that I need to ask more questions in order to understand. But it's where a lot of self-doubt comes into, because meanings change, goalposts change, does make it very hard. Co-occurring medical conditions in autism spectrum disorder are common. They include things like allergies, asthma, epilepsy, digestive disorders, feeding disorders, sleep disorders, sensory integration dysfunction, cognitive impairments, and other medical disorders. So for me, my co-occurring disorders, I guess if you want to call it, I have celiac disease, which is an allergy, effectively, not really an allergy, but anyway, it's an intolerance to gluten in my diet. I didn't find out that I had celiac until just before my 40th birthday, and I had had so many digestive issues and so many gut problems. I was actually diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome when I was 13 after my first episode of fainting. And it wasn't until the second episode of fainting, which I've shared about previously, that I started looking into why it was occurring. And we eventually uncovered, took about 2 years of lots of tests, but we eventually uncovered that it was celiac disease. And once I started on a gluten-free diet, a lot of those symptoms basically were eliminated. So that was good. Here's an interesting fact. Although I'm not sure whether it's a fact. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, this thing that I found tells me that children and teens with autism often have lower bone density than their peers. That'd be interesting to find out whether or not bone breakages and things like that are more common in autistic people. Apparently, up to a third of people with autism spectrum disorder also develop seizure disorders. The rate of seizures in people with ASD is 10 times higher than the general population. Who knew? Here's one I can relate to. And look, there's a ton of words in here, names of things that I'd never even heard of before. So it's all news to me, but hey, let's learn together. Hyperlexia. Now that's the ability to read above one's age or grade level in school that apparently commonly accompanies autism. I was reading from a very early age. Both my sons were also reading from a fairly early age. I don't know whether that was earlier than anybody else. I just know that once I started reading, I couldn't stop and I just wanted to read everything in sight. I think most kids are like that though. So maybe I'll have to ask Mum and Dad. Mum and Dad, can you comment? What age did I start reading? Maybe I'll text Mum and find out. Oh, now, this one is a bit of a, I'll just say it. Children with autism, this says, are 160 times more likely to drown than typical children. Therefore, it's very important to teach them to swim and keep an eye on children around water. I don't know what the stats are on that or what the backup data is to support that. It's a very interesting statistic, though. Researchers and clinicians hypothesize that symptoms of autism spectrum disorder in males and females may differ. No. Really? Okay, so this has got to be old information, seriously, or at least pre-2017. So leading many females to be diagnosed later than males. Yep, and they're also saying that females with ASD are often an understudied group in research. Well, I hope that's changed since this information was available. I really do, because we already know that girls are not diagnosed because we learn how to mask. And a lot of the reason, and probably for you, as it was for me, the reason why you actually got diagnosed is either A, you hit perimenopause and your symptoms just got worse and you were looking for answers, or B, you've got a child who has been diagnosed and through that process you've gone, holy moly, that's me as well. And then bam, yes, you've also been diagnosed because your child got it from either your child got it from either you or their father. So, interesting point. Gender differences in symptoms have been found within the areas of social understanding, social communication, and social imagination. Yeah, this one, a little bit more work to do. And in my experience, employers are recognising that creating a neurodiverse workforce is fundamental for success. I'm not sure they are. Companies that recruit, retain, and nurture neurodivergent employees gain a competitive advantage in the areas of productivity, innovation, culture, and talent retention, to name a few. Well, if only they were. Look, I'm sure that there's actually a number of companies out there who are doing that. Unfortunately, there's also a number that are not and really don't get that. So I'm just going to read that one again. Companies that recruit, retain, and nurture neurodivergent employees gain a competitive advantage in the areas of productivity, innovation, culture, and talent retention, to name a few. Well, if that isn't the bomb drop that we all needed, I don't know what is. Please share this one with someone who recruits people. I'll timestamp it. Many people with autism spectrum disorder are successfully living and working and contributing to the well-being of others in their local communities. And that's most likely to happen when appropriate services are delivered during the child's educational years. Not sure what to think of that one. It's almost like that's another one of those little double negatives. Like, wow, this is so cool that they're able to live in society. Yeah, hello. We've been here a long time, like, since all people were. Not sure I like that one. Anywho, I think the understanding of autism is growing. I think the fact that there is far more people sharing their own journeys helps us to understand better what each individual experiences, what we can relate to with those particular individuals, and what we also don't relate to, which shows us all as individuals, because we're not going to, like I said at the top of this video, we're not going to be the same as each other. One of the best things for me about receiving my autism diagnosis is that I understand me better. All the times where I felt like a square peg in a round hole, where I experienced life differently to my peers, where I had difficulties in things that I thought should be easy, but excelled in so many creative endeavours, has helped me to understand me better. Learning to live life on the spectrum is a continual journey, and it's a path that I will keep walking, keep understanding, and keep moving forward with. What I do know is that not everyone will understand me. That's okay. I'm not here for everyone, and I'm not everyone's cup of tea, same as you're not everyone's cup of tea. our individuality, our unique strengths, the things that we need supports with, all of those make us the wonderful, unique human that we are. Each of us holding such incredible value. I hope you see that in you. A lot of the information that we receive by the time we get to our diagnosis has been negative and has really caused us to feel like we are somehow flawed, that we have a character defect, that there's something wrong with us. I hope you understand that there is nothing wrong with you, that the individual that you are and all of the wonderful traits that you possess, whether you see them or whether you don't yet see them and you're still discovering them, are beautiful, wonderful things that make up the wonderful person that you are. My hope in sharing my own journey is that you understand that you're not broken, you're not a failure, you're a wonderful contributing factor to this beautiful planet of ours. And if no one has told you yet today, I am so glad you're here. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.